Every civilization in human history has had one thing in common. Every single one. From the first farmers in Mesopotamia to the factory workers of Detroit. Every society in every era was held together by one invisible thread. The idea that human beings were necessary. That without us, our hands, our minds, our judgment, the world simply couldn't function. That idea is now being quietly dismantled. And most people have absolutely no idea how fast it's happening. In 2013, two Oxford economists, Carl Benedict Frey and Michael Osborne, published a study that sent shockwave through academic circles. Their conclusion? 47% of American jobs faced a high risk of automation within 20 years. Not some jobs, not low-skilled jobs. Nearly half of everything. And that study was written before modern AI even existed. Since then, the machines didn't slow down, they accelerated. So here's the real question. Not whether AI will replace jobs, but what happens to civilization when it replaces all of them. Right now, in 2026, the transformation is already underway, and it's moving faster than the headlines suggest. Factories across South Korea and Germany have deployed robotic arms that work 24 hours a day without a break, a complaint, or a salary. A single automotive plant in Wolfsburg now runs 3 shifts, with fewer than 40 human workers, overseeing a workforce of thousands of machines. But that's old news. The disruption happening in white-collar industries is what's truly unprecedented. Law firms in New York and London are using AI to review contracts in seconds. Work that once required junior associates billing $300 an hour. Radiology departments at major hospitals have implemented diagnostic AI systems that detect early-stage cancers with greater accuracy than experienced physicians. Customer service departments that once employed hundreds of people have been replaced by conversational AI, systems so sophisticated that callers frequently don't realize they're talking to a machine. And then there's software development, the field that was supposed to be the last refuge of high-skilled human workers. AI coding assistants can now generate production-ready code from a description written in plain English. Companies that once needed 50 engineers are shipping products with 5. The optimist said this would follow the historical playbook, that every industrial revolution destroyed old jobs and created new ones. That the Luddites were wrong in 1812, and the automation skeptics would be wrong again. But that argument rests on a crucial assumption, one that's never been tested before. What if this time the machine can do the new jobs too? For the first several years, the disruption feels manageable, almost invisible to the average person. Call center jobs vanish, but those workers were already underpaid. Trucking shifts toward automation, but the transition is slow, and regulators keep finding reasons to delay. Retail stores close, but people just assumed it was Amazon, not algorithms. The psychological trick of early automation is that it happens at the edges first. It hollows out the labor market from the bottom up, and the people being displaced are rarely in positions of influence. Nobody on a cable news panel loses sleep when data entry clerks are automated away. Nobody writes opinion pieces when textile workers in Bangladesh lose their jobs to robotic looms. But somewhere around the late 2020s, something shifts. The automation starts moving upward. Financial analysts, marketing strategists, architects, journalists, accountants, physicians. One by one, professions that spent decades behind glass, protected by credentials, licensing boards, and the comfortable myth of human irreplaceability begin to crack. The moment that changes public perception isn't a government report or an academic paper, it's something more personal. A mid-career insurance underwriter in Columbus, Ohio, college-educated homeowner, 15 years of experience, logs into work one morning and finds a company-wide email. The underwriting division is being restructured. AI systems will handle the assessment workload. Positions are being eliminated. Generous severance packages are available. She's not alone. That morning, 12,000 people received the same email from different companies, in different industries, in different countries. And that wasn't the biggest problem. When a few industries automate, it creates unemployment. When most industries automate simultaneously, it creates something far more dangerous. It creates a demand collapse. This is the economic domino that most futurists underestimate. The economy is not simply a system of production. It is a loop. Companies produce goods and services. Workers earn wages. Workers spend wages on goods and services. This loop has sustained civilization for centuries. Automation breaks the loop. When companies replace workers with machines, their costs drop dramatically, profits soar, shareholders celebrate. But the workers who were replaced no longer have wages to spend. And when that happens across dozens of industries simultaneously, the consumer base that drives the entire economy begins to shrink. Henry Ford understood this intuitively in 1914 when he doubled his workers' wages to $5 a day, not purely out of generosity, but because he knew his workers needed to be able to afford the cars they were building. The logic was simple. Production without purchasing power is a dead end. But AI doesn't receive a paycheck. It doesn't buy groceries, rent apartments, purchase cars, or take vacations. And as the machines take over, the humans who once did those things have less and less money to spend. The retail sector feels it first. Foot traffic drops, storefronts close, malls that survived the Amazon era finally give way. Then restaurants. Then housing markets in mid-sized cities begin to stagnate as unemployed residents leave for wherever opportunity still seems to exist. Governments scramble to respond. Some propose retraining programs, teaching former truck drivers to become AI supervisors. The programs are well-intentioned and almost entirely inadequate. Retraining a 53-year-old factory worker to maintain machine learning. Infrastructure is not a realistic policy solution. It's a press release dressed up as one. Meanwhile, in the corporate world, a different crisis is forming. Companies discover something they didn't anticipate. Their AI systems are extraordinarily productive, but their customer base is evaporating. You cannot sell luxury goods to a population that can't afford rent. Things were about to get much worse. By the mid-2030s, the unemployment rate in developed nations crosses a threshold economists once considered theoretical. Not 5%, not 10. In some countries, when you count underemployment and workers who've abandoned job searches entirely, the real figure approaches 40%. 40% of adults without meaningful work, without structure, without identity. Because here's something the economic models never fully captured. Work is not just about money, it is about meaning. For most of human history, a person's occupation was their identity: the farmer, the blacksmith, the doctor, the teacher. When you strip that away, not through depression or war, but through a quiet corporate decision in a boardroom, you don't just create poverty, you create an existential crisis. Studies from the Great Depression showed that prolonged unemployment didn't just cause financial hardship. It caused measurable psychological deterioration. Rates of depression and anxiety skyrocketed. Suicide rates climbed, social cohesion fractured. Communities that had existed for generations fell apart within a decade of mass unemployment. Now multiply that by the entire developed world, simultaneously. Mental health systems, already overwhelmed before the disruption, collapse under the weight of a population without purpose. Addiction rates climb. Political extremism surges, because history reliably shows that desperate, purposeless populations are fertile ground for radical movements. The 1930s proved it, and the algorithms of social media, optimized for engagement rather than accuracy, accelerate the radicalization at speeds no previous era could have imagined. The geopolitical consequences are equally severe. Nations that once competed economically begin competing militarily, not for territory, but for control of the AI systems themselves. Because whoever controls the most advanced AI doesn't just have an economic advantage. They have the ability to automate their defense industry, their intelligence operations, their logistics networks, their financial systems. AI becomes the new nuclear deterrent, except nuclear weapons require enormous infrastructure to build. A rogue nation or a rogue corporation can develop AI with a server cluster and a team of engineers. The global security architecture that kept the post-World War II order intact begins to fracture. Alliances form not around ideology, but around access to AI infrastructure. And some of the most powerful AI systems in existence are no longer controlled by governments at all. They're owned by 5 or 6 private technology companies whose combined valuation exceeds the GDP of most countries on Earth. That's when humanity discovered something unexpected. The first serious attempt at a solution arrives from an unlikely source: the Nordic countries. Finland, which had experimented with universal basic income trials as far back as 2017, becomes the first nation to implement a comprehensive post-work economic model. Every citizen receives a guaranteed income floor, enough to cover housing, food, and healthcare. Funded by an aggressive corporate AI tax, every machine deployed in place of a human worker generates a levy paid to the state. The results are messy, complicated. Nothing like the utopia the advocates promised, but also far from the catastrophe the critics predicted. Poverty rates drop measurably. Mental health outcomes improve modestly. But something unexpected emerges alongside the policy. Without the compulsion of survival-driven employment, people don't simply stop being productive. They redirect. Artists who spent decades in marketing jobs finally create the work they always meant to make. Engineers who burned out at tech companies turn their attention to local infrastructure problems, designing better water filtration systems for their neighborhoods, better advertising algorithms for corporations. Communities that had been losing population for decades begin to stabilize as people, freed from the obligation to follow jobs across the country, choose to stay. A new economy begins to form, not around corporations optimizing for profit margins, but around what economists start calling purpose markets. People pay for things made by human hands not because machines can't make them, but because the human origin itself carries value. Handcrafted furniture, neighborhood restaurants with human chefs, live performances, local journalism, teaching, mentoring, and caregiving. Work that AI can simulate but never authentically provide. But this adaptation doesn't come without its own failures. Countries that cannot afford comprehensive social programs, most of the developing world, do not experience this transition. They experience devastation. Bangladesh, which built an entire economic development strategy on textile manufacturing, watches its factories automate away within a decade. Vietnam's export economy, which lifted millions out of poverty through low-cost manufacturing, collapses before alternative industries can form. The great irony of the automation era is that it widens the divide between wealthy and poor nations at precisely the moment it narrows the divide within wealthy nations. Global inequality, already severe, becomes civilizational. By the 2040s, the world that emerges looks nothing like the one that entered the disruption, and everything like what historians, looking backward, should have seen coming. Cities are radically restructured. Dense urban cores still exist, but they are no longer organized around commuting patterns and office districts. Instead, they fragment into neighborhood-scale ecosystems, part community center, part workshop, part garden. The skyscraper districts of Manhattan and Tokyo and London retain their architecture but change their function. Former office towers become vertical living spaces. Corporate campuses become universities with open enrollment. Transportation is almost entirely autonomous. Delivery systems operate underground in cities like Seoul and Amsterdam, a vast network of automated tunnels moving goods without congestion, without emissions, without human drivers. The streets above become quieter, greener, slower. Medicine transforms. AI diagnostic systems, free from the limitations of human expertise and available 24 hours a day, detect diseases earlier than any previous generation of medicine. Life expectancy in developed countries climbs steadily through the 2040s. Precision treatments, developed partly by AI pharmaceutical researchers running simulations that would have taken human scientists decades, begin addressing conditions previously considered untreatable. But a new form of inequality emerges, one that wasn't in any economist model. Access to AI augmentation. The humans who work alongside advanced AI systems, who are enhanced rather than replaced by them, experience something close to cognitive superpowers. A lawyer working with AI research tools can process more case law in an hour than her predecessor could in a year. A scientist using AI to generate and test hypotheses compresses decades of research into years. These augmented individuals, the amplified workforce, as they come to be called, become extraordinarily productive and correspondingly wealthy. A new class hierarchy forms, not around inherited money or even education, but around the ability to effectively collaborate with machine intelligence. The gap between the amplified and the unaugmented becomes as consequential as the gap between the literate and illiterate once was. Here is where the documentary usually ends, with a tidy conclusion, a lesson learned, a future imagined. But that's not quite honest, because there's one more layer to this story, one that most people haven't considered. Throughout this entire transformation, the job losses, the economic upheaval, the political crises, the adaptation, the new civilization, one question was never really answered. What are humans for? For thousands of years, the answer was practical. Humans exist to build, to grow, to govern, to create, to care for one another. The necessity of survival gave life an inherent structure. You worked because you had to. You contributed because the alternative was poverty, starvation, irrelevance. Remove that necessity, remove the economic compulsion at the foundation of modern civilization, and humanity is left with a question it has never had to confront at scale. Not what do I do for work, but why do I exist? The most optimistic answer is that humanity is finally free to answer that question honestly. That without survival driving every decision, people can pursue genuine purpose. That the greatest art, the deepest philosophy, the most meaningful human connections were always buried under the weight of economic obligation. And now, finally, they can rise. The most unsettling answer is that purpose requires struggle. That meaning for human beings is generated not in comfort and freedom, but in challenge and necessity. That the machine doesn't just take our jobs, it takes our reason to push. History offers no precedent for this. No civilization has ever reached this point. We built every tool in human history to reduce effort, and every time we succeeded, we found new efforts to pursue. The plow replaced hand farming, the printing press replaced scribes, the computer replaced clerks. And every time, humanity adapted and found new frontiers. But those frontiers always had one thing in common. Humans were still needed to explore them. Now the machines can explore them for us. So the final question, the one that will define the next century of human civilization, isn't whether AI can replace every job, It already can. The question is whether humanity can replace the only thing that made jobs matter in the first place, the need to matter at all. Please subscribe this channel to support us.